What if this European crisis could never be fixed? What would happen? Well, I'm going to show you that today. Let's take a look at everything Europe and then connect that in with the rest of the world. It would be very important to understand all of the dynamics no matter where you are because it gives foresight into what you could possibly see because each and every domino falls, not necessarily in order, not necessarily first, but it always happens, especially in this globalized world that we live in. Now, I'm going to show you all the aspects that are going on today, but I want to cover something first. Bets against the euro have soared to levels seen back in 2020. Investors holding short euro positions against everything. Euro languishing close to multi-decade lows against the dollar. So this is very important to understand because the US dollar had done very well throughout this period. And you look at what happened with Europe. And of course, that currency had been falling. Why? Well, there's so many reasons, in fact. Here are a few things. Fueled by concern about Europe's deteriorating economic situation and increased geopolitical risks, investors' bearishness on the euro is now eclipsing levels seen back in October 2020 when, of course, everything was going wild. So, of course, you've got the Ukraine situation. You are seeing what's happening with natural gas and other forms of energy. This is all piling up on top of existing issues, many existing issues. And we'll talk very briefly about that right now. You've got all of these nations using one currency. You've got them using one interest rate. Yet these are very different and diverse economies and cultures. You can't force everybody on the same thing. This platform doesn't exist. The way that it should be is all about trade, the way it was set up initially. You don't have to force everybody onto one system. It doesn't work. It's broken. And since 99, things haven't improved. For certain countries, Germany is loving the situation, let me tell you, but other countries might just fare better if they head to the exit. Okay? That's just a little tidbit. I know some people have asked for more opinions on the situation and color commentary, so I think maybe that would be the time to do so. So you can see here that we're talking about the short positions and so on, and of course we don't need to get too detailed, but just understand. Look at the devastation that this causes. If you're buying everything in dollars, that's what you had to do. You were used to, let's say, 130 to the US dollar, and now it's parity. That's 30% devaluation in a sense. So this definitely has an impact. Even when you buy products from within your own country or maybe within the Eurozone and so on, things are still priced in dollars. And that means that you've got to convert the currency, or those who are buying those products on the producer side are buying it in dollars. And that affects you directly. Okay, that's just the way it goes. Here we have it. Europe slips towards recession, not in a recession apparently, but towards it as the ECB mulls steps ahead. Central bankers set to flock to Fed's Jackson Hole being in September, of course. Israel, Iceland, South Korea, Botswana may hike rates again. They're all seemingly doing that right now. You got to understand, Europe is in this real big predicament because they couldn't get any inflation. For the longest time, we can't get any inflation. We need to do whatever we can. And now they have too much inflation and they can't get rid of it because of so many factors. And of course, not to mention the fact that they printed trillions upon trillions of euro. You look at what's going on with Russia. They relied so heavily on one country, and yet we're talking bad about them the whole time. And suddenly, you lose that stream, you got an issue. Germany said no to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and suddenly the whole Ukraine thing happened what seemed like the week or two later. I don't know if it was coincidence. And then you understand with what's happened more recently with the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, the actual total volume of gas that's moved through has declined as well. So this is having a direct impact on Europe. You've got countries like, I mean, so many of them that are heavily reliant on what happens in Russia. Now you've got a battle between these countries. Of course, it's going to impact regular people. Here you can see Germany's economy failed to grow in the second quarter, just showing us the darker the red areas, the slower the growth, and it's just not going to happen. I mean, these countries here do not have an opportunity to ever grow again. The jobs aren't moving there. The jobs are moving away. You got to understand, if they're moving all of the manufacturing away, if they're not having strong economies locally, there's only so much that they can do. There's only so many exports Germany can do. You need to have local consumption. The same with Italy. Yes, you can export all the fashion and the agriculture and all these different things, but you need that domestic consumption as well. And I really don't think that's happening to a great degree. So there's more in here if you want to check it out. You can see this. Germany's producer prices, that's the red line, and Germany's CPI are both going essentially parabolic right now. 2020, in percentage terms, right here, you can see the acceleration on that right-hand side. That's the CPI. It's just unbelievable to see it near 8%, probably around 7.5% at this time. Look at what has happened in it's just incredible. Here we have this is basically Germany's electricity on the top. You look at French, Dutch, UK natural gas, Newcastle coal, different types of energy essentially, and they've all gone berserk. Everybody in Europe is paying more, and of course, they've got a problem, okay? Because they were trying to push so heavily for all the green energy and so on, put a lot of attention into that, while at the same time putting so much reliance on Russia. And then basically they run into this issue. And now what's going on? Well, across the world, coal power is back. They were talking about coal is terrible. We're going to bankrupt coal and all this. And then what happened? In the United States, coal consumption hit an all-time high in 2013. And then what happened here? Well, the same thing was going on all around the world. 2013, they thought, hey, this is crazy. We got to get rid of this coal. And now what's going on? Every country they were like trying to get rid of all their coal. They weren't opening new mines. Those were shutting down. The consumption was going down as well. And things have turned around on a dime. And that brings me to this. Warren Buffett, okay? People read into Warren Buffett when they want to and then ignore him when they want to. It's funny the way he's quoted. Here's why Warren Buffett loves oil giant Occidental Petroleum. You could see that they have won approval to get 50% of the company, and they continue to accumulate. What this tells me, this company, by the way, Occidental Petroleum, has shale in the US, huge positions on that. And I believe they're profitable. Most of that is profitable at $40 a barrel. So that is significant because a lot of the shale is, you got to be really up there in the price to make it happen. So what, as far as I'm concerned, is Warren Buffett doing here is that he believes that this is a commodities super cycle, and that for the next several years, even if there is a recession, I guess he doesn't believe there's going to be a deep recession. And therefore, oil is going to be needed, and different products that they make are going to be needed for the foreseeable future. So do you agree with Buffett or not? Well, we'll see what happens, right? I think it is interesting, to say the least, when you see a huge, it's not just a little position for him. This is definitely massive. Okay, look at this. Despite recession fears and fueled by, quote, revenge spending, very odd, Americans spend $314 a month on impulse purchases. That's right. People are buying until the very last dollar. The savings rate has declined dramatically. Credit card usage is through the roof. And here you can see people spending. They're always going to do this. Okay, the caution that people have, they might exercise a little bit of caution, but in general, really not the case. They usually push themselves overboard, and it just shows us that when a crisis hits, it hits very hard. This is the same thing going on everywhere to one degree or another, even in China. Okay, you see the same thing happening where people are using their cards as much as possible and really pushing themselves to the edge. Inflation sends car ownership costs soaring above $10,000 a year. And that is expensive. You look at that, that's one thing. That's a car. Okay, that is a car. And it shows you that a lot of young people today, they don't want to own a car anymore. They don't. They're saying, you know what? It's just not worth it. And if they can't afford the 10,000, plus they can't afford their rent, plus they can't afford all these other things, they have to go what they need. And so maybe they get rid of the car. So I'm interested to see what happens after all this car fiasco where 2019, there were so many cars. If you're on this channel, you saw this. There were so many cars, they didn't have places to put them. They were sitting on ships offshore, just waiting for lots to be emptied so that they can put the cars there. Then we hit 2020 and there's a shortage of vehicles. What happened to all those 2019 vehicles? It's so strange. What happened with the whole car? Then Hertz needed to get rid of, they were just selling all of their cars at fire sale prices. And then what happened? They turned around and now everything's fine. It's the most unusual time we're living through right now. Just unbelievable. And of course, with all of these prices that have been going up considerably, there's supply chain issues. India may import wheat in blow to Modi's vision of feeding the world. And this is interesting because, as they say here, the second biggest grower has already restricted wheat exports. So they restrict the exports, and now they need more for domestic consumption. It's very interesting. So I'm watching this. Watch what happens with the supply chain. We are not out of the water yet. There are still big concerns. There's no doubt about it. So just understand that when you see what happens to a country or an area like Europe, it could be for many different reasons. There's never a way to just pinpoint one particular reason. But if you want to see what happens when there is, an actual full-blown crisis, like the financial crisis or the housing crisis, you do need a catalyst. That catalyst doesn't need to happen overnight, but there needs to be a spark. That's very important to understand. Then we'll finish off with this. US mortgage lenders are starting to go broke. Yes, you heard me correctly. To anybody that has made it to this part in the video, this is happening today. Now, it's not happening to the A lenders. This is happening to the B lenders, but it's still very important because that's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. A B lender is essentially not your main banks. You're not going to go to Chase Bank. That's an A lender. You're going to go to a B lender, and that's other financial institutions. It very well could be, but they're just not your typical banks that you may be used to. And their rates are generally a bit higher, but they also are taking on a lot of the customers that the A lenders are not going to do that with. So, just for an example, you might have a situation where somebody's credit is not the best. That could be one thing. It could be a person is self-employed. If you're self-employed, a lot of times, and especially if you don't have a lot of history in your business, and other factors with that, A lender might say, sorry, I can't give you a loan. So you go to the B lender. They look at your statements, your bank statements. They say, all right, we're good. We'll give you that cash. So it's a little bit more loose. So if there are problems, you may very well see that in the B lenders first. That's what's happening today. After crisis, banks account for less of the mortgage business. Independent mortgage lenders are seeing their credit lines cut. So all of this is significant right now. It's not huge. It's not massive, but it is important because we need to follow all these details so that we can see as everything starts to dwindle down and disappear and have so many different concerning factors. This is just one of them. So I hope you appreciated this. You see what's happening within Europe. And it seems as though, well, you've got a problem in Europe. you've got that contagion, what I call the Euro viral contagion, could absolutely spill out into other economies around the world, including the United States. It doesn't necessarily have to be right after, but you really can't get away from it. If Europe is in a major crisis, if they are going to see some serious deflation or maybe some other event that takes place, it is absolutely going to impact the United States at some point. Let me know what you think about this. As always, I am watching each and every comment, so I definitely appreciate that. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you on the next one. Take care.